Good evening, everybody. I want to welcome you all to the January installment of our C.A.R.E series. I'm very excited to be kicking off 2019 with another full year of really awesome seminars for you guys as pet owners. And tonight, behavior really brings out a crowd. I'm excited to be looking out into this room and see so many people here. Whenever we have behavior as a topic specifically, we get a lot of pet owners, and it really piques your interest. So I'm excited to see that you're all interested in tonight's topic. I'm more than excited to introduce tonight's speaker. I've known Shane since he was basically a child. He informed me he was about 20 years old, but I still think he was younger than that. But you know, I've had the honor of knowing this guy since I feel like he was a kid, and he's been rescuing misfits and taking care of the castaways full-time ever since then. He started with us part-time. We've gotten him up to full-time now. He does both jobs pretty much full-time, rescuing and training and doing behavior for us here at the Utah Dog Park at our locations. So without too much more hesitation, I'm excited to get him up here. He's got a lot of content, and then we'll open it up for questions at the end. So thanks so much for coming, and Shane, take it away.
Yep. Like Becky said, my name is Shane Tyler. I have been working with Becky and Dr. Pam since late 2007, before the dog park was even open. I was there when they opened up the very first dog park. I've been training. I started studying behavior for probably over 11, 12 years now, and actually started doing my own training for about 10 and a half years now. With me, all of the courses and the training that I've done and attended and the trainers that I've really trained under have primarily been either courses over in Europe or from trainers that came here from Europe. I felt like a lot of more of the European style meshed well with how my philosophies tended to be. I believe rather than trying to control and micromanage every little thing that the dog can and can't do in a day-to-day basis, I prefer to try to give choices and teaching them through natural learning with consequence of action. And as we kind of talk about some of the things that we do tonight, that'll kind of make a little bit more sense, how you can let the dogs have choices and teach them self-control instead of you just having to micromanage every little thing that they can and can't do, but do it in a way that it's going to help them still make the right choices. When they went and posted asking what you guys were all interested in hearing about for this topic for tonight, there's a big variety of different individual behavior issues. And so a lot of what we're going to do tonight is going to be a basic intro to essentially what I teach all my clients as a good starting point, where I tend to focus on 6 core boundaries that you want to implement with your dogs that help to address those questions that your dogs may have in terms of who's in charge, what are the rules, what's okay, what's not. And I have found the majority of behavior issues tend to stem from one or more of these 6 boundaries. And so a lot of what we're going to talk about tonight are going to be those 6 core boundaries. And with those boundaries, we're going to cover, the first one we'll talk about is going to be attitude. This focuses more specifically upon how your reactions are going to help or hurt you as you're trying to work with your dog, and how they feed off of our own reactions, and how we oftentimes unintentionally reinforce the wrong behaviors without realizing it or without trying to. We're going to talk about respecting personal space. These are going to be your dogs that are jumping on you, that are barking for attention, that sort of stuff. Feeding is going to be another one. How to kind of go about that whole feeding routine. I know some people had questions about like food aggression, that sort of stuff. The walk is going to be another one that we'll touch on. The walk, I would say at least 90% of people that contact me list some issues in regards to walking on a leash, whether it's pulling, overreacting, being leash aggressive, things like that, as at least one of their main issues that they're looking for help with. Protection is going to be your dogs that go absolutely crazy when they hear the doorbell, or they see the mailman out the front window. And then socialization. This is getting dogs comfortable and familiar in common settings that they're going to be exposed to, whether that's being around dogs, people, kids, going to the vets, having their nails trimmed, stuff such as that. So it's the first one. The first one we're going to talk about is going to be attitude. Like I said, this is where they are feeding off of our own reactions. And they not only feed off of just reactions in general, but they're feeding off of external reactions and internal ones. And so your common external reactions are going to be things like eye contact, how you walk, your posture, your general body language, the tone of your voice. A lot of people try to teach their dog recall or to come when called, but they have a very come here kind of, that doesn't sound very inviting. When I was a kid and we were yelled at to get upstairs right now, we weren't in a big hurry to do that because it didn't sound like it was going to be good. They also feed off of our internal reactions. Dogs can detect changes in our heart rate, our blood pressure, when we're tensed up, hormone changes. A lot of times when someone is pregnant, dogs' behavior completely changes. A lot of times the male dogs become much more protective. Female dogs may become more difficult and more challenging. They can even detect changes in our brain activity. There are dogs that are trained as service animals that can detect seizures before they happen. A mentor of mine had a dog that, when she first got him, had probably seizures daily before she could get it under control. And she always knew in advance because the other dogs would start to obsessively lick his face, specifically around his eyes, anywhere from 45 minutes up to an hour before that seizure would hit. So they are incredibly in tune to what's going on, and they're going to feed off of that. And so with this is where you can only fake it to make it so much with these guys. They know when you're really confident or when you're just, really? Okay, let's just, give it a shot. They are also going to react differently in terms of, as we go through those 5 boundaries, the remaining 5 boundaries, we're going to talk about how they are going to react differently depending on how you handle the situation. And so the way that I generally will address attitude, because they do take advantage of those inconsistencies. It's very similar to when you have kids that play one parent versus the other, or a kid that acts one way when mom or dad is at home, and then when the babysitter's in charge, oh no, we always get to stay up this late. No, our parents let us watch this show all the time, it's fine. They're just like little kids. People mistake dog training where they almost view it as like their program in a TV remote. That the dog's been trained, therefore they're going to behave this way from here on out for everybody equally. It's not like that. They are going to play one owner versus the other. And it's one of those things where, okay, mom is being really consistent with all the rules, so the dog ends up respecting mom and listening to her really well. Dad is more lax and so, oh, well, he's easy. I don't need to really listen to him that much. I can get away with a lot more. And so the way I normally go about this is, as we go through those other 5 boundaries, we're going to talk about common mistakes that people make, things that you want to avoid doing, habits that you want to try to make, so that way you're not giving the dogs mixed messages. So the next one we'll talk about is going to be personal space. The basic golden rule when it comes to teaching a dog to respect personal space is that you want to make sure that any attention that you give to your dog is done by invitation. You ultimately decide, how, where, when they're getting that attention. It's very similar to teaching a little kid to wait their turn and teaching them to not interrupt when you're talking. Wait till we're done, then it's your turn. With this, the golden rule, like I said, any interaction with the dog should be on your terms. And so if the dog comes up uninvited, I don't say anything, I don't make eye contact, I block him and push him away. Using that hand signal, for many dogs, tend to almost be like universally understood as kind of a, no, not now. This doesn't involve you, you don't need to worry about this, that sort of a thing. I use this. At this point, for me, I instinctively, if I see a dog coming up out of the corner of my eyes, I automatically just kind of stick my hand out and it's that, oh, okay, and they hang back. You can use this when you're getting ready to leave out the door. Rather than making a big, huge production of, it's okay, we'll be back, don't worry about it, and winding them up even more and making that departure even more dramatic, You just walk out, kind of use that hand signal as like that reassurance of, don't worry about it. You don't need to worry over this. Common mistakes that people are going to make is saying things like, get down, knock it off, go to your kennel, sit, be quiet, don't do that, leave her alone. But the problem is, as soon as you say anything like this, or as soon as you are making eye contact with that dog, you're giving them attention. And so it just ends up reinforcing that, yeah, this works. This gets me something out of you. It's really similar to having a little kid that is showing off and misbehaving in front of company. Even though they may know that they're going to get in trouble, it's still the whole fact that they're getting a reaction, or they get a laugh out of that person, that just motivates them to want to keep doing it. As long as the dog's being respectful, you can look at him, call him to you, give as much attention as you want. It's just making sure it's done when you're ready for it. And what I usually tell people is that even if you want to love on that dog, still just have that expectation of that they need to wait their turn until they just hang back, even if it's for a few seconds. Okay, come here, and then you can call them over to you. It's just making sure that it's teaching them it needs to be when you're ready for it, not when they demand it. I tell people all the time that you want to make sure that the family is fitting in around the dogs, not the dogs, well, reverse that. You want the dog to be fitting in with the family, not the family running circles around the dog on their whims. And like I said before, you decide when, which dog is getting the attention. If you're giving attention to one dog and another one comes trying to shove their way in, again, you block them because I didn't ask you. This isn't your turn yet. You decide how the attention is being given. I usually try to get across to people that you want calm to be normal. A lot of people tend to make the excuse that, well, they're a puppy, or they're this breed, or, well, yeah, they're a dog. Of course they're going to be crazy, or they're going to be hyper. And yeah, excitement, and there's a time and a place for the higher energy levels and whatnot, but you still want the expectation that calm should be your normal. And so what I usually will say is, if the dog is waiting patiently and you call them over to you and then they just go nuts and are all over the place, I go back to blocking and ignoring until they calm down again. That way it's teaching them that, oh, okay, this doesn't get me what I want when I act this way. This is kind of going back to that whole consequence of action and giving them choices. Yeah, you can act this way all you want, but you don't get any attention when you do it. And so for the dogs, they always tend to work with that mentality of, well, what's in it for me? What's the point of me doing this? Why should I waste my time and energy doing a certain behavior or a certain action if it gets me nothing? And so oftentimes with situations like that, they're going to test and they'll push, and you may even see them try to do new things that they've never done before to get attention before they finally, okay, well, this is stupid. It's not getting me anything. And so then they change tactics and, oh, okay, well, if I act this way instead, if I'm calmed down, that's when I get attention. I had one client years ago that I came in the front door and he was on his back legs for the first good 10, 15 minutes straight, just jumping. And so the owner is, see, this is exactly the problem, and getting after the dogs, no, just ignore him, leave him be. And I just kept blocking him and ignoring him. After about 10, 15 minutes, he stopped jumping up, but then started to bark at me, which the owner kind of panicked because, okay, well, that's worse than the jumping up, but this dog was not dumb. He figured out pretty quickly that jumping's not getting me anything, so I'm going to try something different. When he realized that the barking wasn't going to work, then he went to a different tactic and he started going the route of bringing me toys. And he'd bring a toy, I'd drop it in my lap, and then kind of pick it up and drop it and paw at me. So I took the toy and I put it up on the shelf. And so we went and grabbed another toy, and we repeated it again. By about the third toy, he's like, okay, this is stupid. Now I'm just losing all my toys. And so he went and laid down next to me, which the owner initially was like, oh my gosh, this is what I would like for him to do from the beginning. But what she wasn't paying attention to was he was laying down, but his feet were just over the top of my shoes. He was going the subtle route of being cute and cuddly now, because the typical reaction for that would be, oh, what a good boy, and loving on him. Even then, I blocked him and kind of moved his feet away. So he went and laid flat on his side, where the very top of his head was just barely brushed up against the side of my foot. He was going for as subtle as he possibly could. And when that wasn't getting him anything, then he kind of sat up and you could see him looking around and thinking it through, and then he went and grabbed another toy but started to play by himself. And at that point, I could call him to me and give him as much attention as I wanted. And the thing about it to keep in mind with this is that they are going to be the most pushy and persistent in the beginning, because up until this point, well, this has always worked. But you're going to start to see it get less and less as they start to realize that, okay, well, these things don't work anymore. What works is for me to be calm and respectful. Now, how our reactions and how attitude play a factor into this? Are you making eye contact with the dog? We oftentimes forget how much communication happens instantly when you make eye contact. If you're at the store and you see a friend, you make and hold eye contact as you're talking to them. If you happen to make eye contact with a total stranger at the store, typically you're going to instinctively look away at the same time, because if you don't, it gets really awkward and uncomfortable. Versus when you come around the corner and, oh crap, you have that, nope, I don't need anything over here, and you hurry and go to a different aisle because I do not want to talk to that person. But if you were to make eye contact with them, you're stuck. Even if you don't actually talk and engage with each other, there's that instant communication. And people oftentimes, without even realizing it, will glance down at the dog, and then the dog starts trying to get attention. It's like, okay, well, don't look at him. Oh, no, I didn't. You did. And that's why they're now, trying to climb onto your lap again. So be mindful. Are you make eye contact? Are you pushing them away but looking at them as they're doing it? Because with your hand, you're saying, no, leave me alone. With your eyes, you're saying, no, come here, and inviting them right back in. If it's a dog that's really pushy and persistent, put them into a timeout where you don't say anything, no eye contact, take them, put them into a room where they're completely by themselves until they're quiet again. Even if it's just them having been quiet for 10 seconds. That typically is going to start to teach them that, okay, the benefits of doing a timeout correctly is that it gives them a chance to kind of reset and calm themselves down, and B, it's that natural consequence that goes against instincts of survival. There's safety numbers. I'd rather be part of a group than isolated on my own. And so with the potential threat of getting kicked out of the family, when they start being really pushy about it, you put them into a timeout. Don't give them that internal reaction of, even though you're not looking at them, saying anything to them, they can still pick up on all that tension. How do you walk in or through a room? Are you immediately walking in and looking at the dog and talking to them? Because that's just going to wind them up. And you can see two different examples here. With this one, as she's walking in the room, she's giving attention to the dogs and whatnot, and so you start to see them jumping up more and crowding more around her and competing for attention with each other. Versus when she just comes in the room and walks through the dogs, you're going to see almost like a bubble around her as she's walking through. No one's really jumping up. Yeah, they're interested and they're following, but they're giving her a lot more space. So be mindful, when you first come home, yeah, you're excited to see your dog, but still have the same expectations that, I'm going to hang up my coat, put my purse away, put the groceries away, and the dog can settle down and calm down, and then as soon as they're going to still be excited, but they still need to have some self-control and still be respectful and giving you space until you're ready for it. Do you guys have any questions with personal space? Yes?
So we have 2 dogs, and for a multi-pet household, it's like one of our dogs is much more rowdy than the others.
Okay.
Is there a way to handle that better, like to pet one first so the others like they don't get in the way, or?
No, you'll still follow the same basic rule where, if your other dog is being respectful and giving you space, you can give attention to them. If the other one's still being pushy and rowdy, you're blocking and ignoring. A lot of people tend to think, okay, well, if I always let this dog go through the door first, if I always feed this dog first, the other dog is going to see them as in charge. You can't force that whole status adjustment on the 2 dogs. If anything, it's just going to stress things out even more by trying to force this pecking order upon the dogs that they may not even want to have in place. But it's basically going to be the same rules where as long as they're being respectful, you can give them attention and give as much attention as you want. But if they're getting really pushy about it or being rude or whatnot, you go back to blocking and ignoring until they calm down again and until you're ready to give them attention again. And it's the same thing where they'll start to learn more and more that, okay, well, this is just what's expected. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, dang. Sorry, I was pressing the bottom. Okay, I think we're on now.
So you talked about not reinforcing a bad behavior by drawing attention to it. How do you dissuade a bad behavior when the dog's not wanting attention from you?
Like give me an example.
So if the dog is on the couch and is very comfortable there, but you don't want them on the furniture.
So at that point, that's where you can go, just take them by the collar and move them off. And if they keep trying to jump up, you just keep removing them. Or if they keep upping the ante, then you can up it where as soon as they jump up on the couch, they go into a timeout. So that way they start making that connection. It's going to be the repetition and consistency that's going to help teach them that, okay, this is what happens every time I do this. I don't like that outcome. But if I act this way instead, okay, I get to stay out with everybody, or this is what happens, and I'd much rather have that. So this is where you're giving them choices where, yeah, you can keep jumping up there all you want, but this is what happens every single time you do. And it starts to teach them that, okay, well, I don't really want that, so I'll do something different. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, so with feeding, I tend to take a very different approach when it comes to feeding than a lot of other trainers or people do. I don't really make the dog sit or tell them to stay or have them wait until, okay, now you can eat or anything like that. Again, I try to focus more on the self-control. And so with this one, you want to make sure that as you're getting the food ready, I usually do it up on the counter on a table, somewhere where it's raised up that the dogs can't directly interfere as you're preparing the food. If the dogs are jumping or barking or spinning or really anything over the top, yeah, there's going to be excitement, that's normal, but they still, again, need to be showing some self-control and a little bit more respect about it. If they are jumping or spinning or anything like that, what I typically do is I just take a step back. Yep, you can act this way all you want, but the longer you do this, the longer you have to wait to be fed. And if they don't calm down at all, I put the bowl away and I walk off entirely. Because then it's that, oh crap, that's not what I wanted. Again, don't tell the dog to sit or to wait or anything like that. This is where you're letting them think for themselves and figure this out that, okay, yeah, it doesn't benefit me to be jumping or trying to get into the bowl before you put it down or anything. As long as they're being respectful, you get the food ready. When you go to start to set the bowl down, if they start moving forward or rushing to go grab the food, I stand back up with it. Because symbolically, what you're basically showing is, okay, this is the food, I'm giving it to you, but until you actually set the bowl down and step away from it, that bowl of food is technically yours. And it's, again, expecting that respect of, okay, I should wait my turn. In the beginning, you're going to have probably a lot of up and down. You're going to get some ab workout going in. Once you set the bowl down, though, and you step away, at this point, I give the dog total space to eat in peace. I do not agree with sticking your hands in the bowl, trying to pet the dog as they're eating, trying to take the bowl away from the dog, because unfortunately a lot of people still recommend stuff like that, saying that it will help them get used to that sort of a thing and it'll try to prevent food aggression. From my experience, it creates food aggression, and sometimes can create severe food aggression because now you have a dog that's constantly worrying about if someone's going to take their food away from them. Food is survival. It goes right back to that survival instinct. And the other way that I look at it is, if I'm at a restaurant and someone keeps trying to eat off my plate, there's going to be a fork going in someone's hand really quickly if they don't knock it off. I had a client where they had contacted me because they, a few months before, had gotten an 8-week-old puppy. It was probably about 6 months old at this point. And they read books, they followed the advice that they had read in those books and online and what people had told them in terms of trying to hold the dog while it's eating, petting them, sticking their hands in the bowl, and it developed such severe food aggression that they had a special bite glove for this little Chihuahua Yorkie mix, and they couldn't even walk in the room when the food bowl was down without him running over and attacking their feet. He had gotten that defensive over the food because they kept pestering him when he was eating. And at the time, my schedule was pretty busy, and so it was at least a week and a half before I could get out there. And so what I said, in the meantime, set the bowl down, walk out of the room. Just leave him alone, let him eat. Once he's stepped away from the bowl and he's done, you pick it up, and then you can put it away. By the next week, when I was finally able to get out there, they had said his aggression has almost completely stopped. We can actually walk in the room, things like that, and he doesn't freak out at us anymore. And it all comes back to that whole, someone's going to try to take this away from me, I've got to keep them away. Now, the other thing is, as soon as the dog does step away from the bowl, and this is regardless of whether they've eaten everything or they've left food in it and they're just picking and grazing at it. As soon as they've walked away from the bowl, the food is gone. It goes up and it's out of reach, and typically for me, I don't feed them again until it's their normal time to be fed again. The problem with free feeding is, by nature, canines are not grazers. They are opportunist eaters. If food is available, they're going to go for it, because instinctively, who knows when my next meal is going to come. In the wild, it could literally be 6-7 days before they're able to get food again. The other thing about this is that when you leave food down all the time and they can control it, again, food is survival, and being able to control the food is a big display of leadership. And so for them, when they can pick and choose how much they eat, when they're going to eat, when they're going to go back and eat some more, then it kind of helps reinforce in their mind, okay, I must be in this elevated status of being in charge or having more responsibility than they realistically do or should. So as soon as they walk away from the bowl, you pick it up, you put it away. It does not take dogs long to learn, yeah, I need to eat this when it goes down. The same way that a lot of parents teach little kids, that's fine, if you're not going to eat dinner, that's okay, but you're not getting anything else later. We're not feeding you anything in a couple hours, we're not making something different, this is what you have to eat. It's the same expectations. Now, in terms of how our reactions can affect this whole area, a lot of dogs tend to get really stressed out and anxious when their dog isn't eating. And for them, it's kind of like that, oh my gosh, they're going to starve themselves, and they feel really guilty. And now you've got the dog picking up on your anxiety, and now they're focused more on, oh my gosh, what's wrong, than feeling comfortable enough to go and eat. Do you get annoyed if the dog doesn't settle down, or if they start begging for food? I've had a lot of people that will say, we've never given him food, but he's still constantly begging for food when we're trying to eat. And it kind of goes back to that whole respecting personal space, because what I'll go and say is, but do you say anything to them when they're begging for food? Well, yeah, we tell them, no, you're not getting any, go away, knock it off, go to your kennel. Again, they're still getting something out of it. It may not be the food, but they're still getting something. Does your dog anticipate feeding time? I've seen this several times where I'm sitting in a consultation, all of a sudden the dog starts barking and running back and forth in and out of the room. And then the owners are, oh, okay, he's just letting us know it's time to feed him. Well, he's got you trained really well. Okay? If you feed every single time in the afternoon around like 5 o'clock, feed at 4:30. Or if he starts throwing a fit, feed at 6:30. You can keep it a little bit unpredictable, so it's when you're ready to give the food, not when they're ringing the servant's bell and demanding that they be fed grapes on their throne. Okay, the walk. Like I said, with the walk, this is probably the most frequent behavior issue that I get asked about. Who here has issues on a leash or out on a walk? Yeah. Unfortunately, with this is a very involved and in-depth topic, and we only have a very limited amount of time. So Dr. Lindsay and I have been talking about doing, later on down the line or in a few months, doing one specifically upon walking while on a leash. Who would be interested in having that just specifically be the topic? Okay. There's still some things, though, that you can be looking at to try to improve things, even though we can't completely go in as deep as I would like to. But the way that I usually go about teaching a dog how to walk well on and off leash is I first start off leash inside the home. The reason for this is because off leash, they have all three of their defense mechanisms of flight, freeze, and fight, so they're going to feel much more comfortable. This is why a lot of dogs tend to be much more defensive or overreactive on a leash, because as soon as you put the leash on, they can't run away if they feel threatened. And so then they overcompensate a lot of the times. So off leash in the house, they're going to feel more comfortable. It's more of a controlled environment of, well, if they aren't listening, where are they going to go? You don't have to try to chase them down. And there's a lot less distractions inside the house to begin with. I then start to practice on leash inside the home. And then on leash outside of the home, and then off leash outside of the home is the last step. Now, with this, something to keep in mind is that yes, your dog does need adequate exercise and mental stimulation when you're doing this sort of stuff. However, giving them a walk is not the only way to do that. I oftentimes have clients hold off on taking their dogs for a walk because if the dog's not ready and you still keep going out there because, oh, I was told by so-and-so that because I have this type of dog, I should be walking them 2 times a day for at least an hour every single time. You're just giving them more opportunities to practice the wrong behaviors. So there's plenty of ways, whether it's if you have a fenced yard, throwing a ball for them, running around. If you have multiple dogs in the household, them playing together, going to daycare, mental stimulation. People don't realize how tiring mental stimulation or anything that's involving their brain and them having to work out a problem can be for a dog. Puzzle toys, frozen peanut butter in a Kong. There's a really, really easy thing that I teach people called treat searches. The nice thing about treat searches is it's incredibly easy, minimal effort for you guys, and even just 10, 15 minutes of this can knock out a dog for a few hours and just exhaust them. With treat searches, basically what you're looking at is you take a small handful of food and you go out and you scatter in the grass. And all it is, you just let them go find it. The fact that they have to use their nose to search out the food, the great thing about this is that you can't have a dog going nuts and running all over the place and losing their mind and be able to, oh, and here's a treat. And we're gonna run around, oh, they have to be calm and focused. And so they're really using their mind to be searching for this food in the grass. I have seen people that, their dogs were going stir crazy because they recently had surgery and they couldn't get their dogs out. And they had said, I just need someone to come and walk them because they're going nuts and they're driving me crazy because they're getting into everything. Doing treat searches for about 15 minutes, the dog came inside, climbed up on the couch, and passed out. It's such minimal effort. And so far, I haven't seen dogs really get tired of doing it. Sometimes you do need to make it a little bit easier for them, especially in the beginning if they've never done something like that before. So maybe rather than just using like kibble or treats, things like that, maybe it's you're taking a hot dog and you cook it for 30 seconds and you cut up into small pieces and that's what you're throwing so that they can find it a little bit easier and it's more enticing in the beginning. But like I said, this is a really good form of mental stimulation that can still wear them out without you having to take them for a walk before you're ready for it. Something that I usually start with inside the home off leash, desensitize the triggers. If you can't say the word walk, or you can't pick up the leash, or pick up your car keys, or put on running shoes without the dog going absolutely crazy and through the roof, you've lost control before you ever step foot out of the house with that dog. And on top of that, you tend to have people on just going, you want to go for a walk? Okay, come on, let's go for a walk. And you wind them up even further, and then they're dragging you out the front door, and then you're getting frustrated with them and jerking back on the leash because they're dragging you down the sidewalk, and they're not listening. Well, you just spend a good 5-10 minutes getting their adrenaline going and getting them pumped up. It's like taking a little kid to Disneyland, taking them on all these rides, and okay, now you got to sit down here and do some homework. They're not going to be able to focus on anything. You have to give them a chance to come back down. So desensitize to those triggers. Pick up a leash, set it down on the table. And then you grab it and you set it down on the back of the couch, and then on to the back of the door, and then onto the counter. And you just randomly pick it up and you set it down again. That way it starts to break this association that, well, you only grab the leash when we're going out. Yeah, they may be interested in paying attention when you grab the leash, but for them it's kind of like that, well, I'm not going to get really excited because the last 3 times, yep, you just put it down again. Same with the word walk. I've had people say we can't even spell the W word anymore because they've learned how to spell it. And so I'm like, what? You can't say walk? Because are you only going to ever say walk when you're taking the dog for a walk? Because I don't think that's the only time you can say walk. And I just kept saying it over and over again. Yeah, the dog in the beginning is getting worked up and hyped. But then after a couple minutes, it's, okay, whatever, who cares? And they start to calm down again. If you have multiple dogs, I usually try to work with them individually because it's a lot harder when you're trying to juggle 2 dogs that are distracting each other. But if you can, using like a baby gate or a crate or anything like that, try to still work with at least one of them in a place where the other one can at least watch. because there's a lot to be said for a dog's learning something by watching someone else do it first. Now, some common things, for me, two of the most important things that you could teach your dog is to come and to stay. Those are safety factors. A lot of people, when I ask how's the dog about coming and how are they about staying, it's, well, they're okay, or, well, yeah, I've got 100% recall 80% of the time. Okay, so you've got 80% recall. But then they usually launch into, but look, I can make them sit, lie down, shake, roll over, play dead, speak, and they go onto this huge list of all these tricks, which is fine. But if your dog gets loose and is booking it for a busy road, knowing that they can roll over and shake is not going to help you very much. You need to know that you can get your dog to stop and to come back. And ideally, the first or second time that you call them, not having to call them 5, 6, 7 times after that. When the dog is doing well in the house, if you have a fenced backyard, I start to practice in the backyard because as long as it's fenced, it's now just an extension of the home. But the nice thing about it is that there's more distractions in the backyard. And so you're learning the very basics inside where it's easier, and then now we're just making it a little bit harder. I usually tell people when there's about 85% consistency with the dog, make it a little bit harder. That way there's always a little bit of a challenge for the dog instead of it just being the same old thing, repetitive over and over and over, and then they get bored with it. When they're walking on leash, what I usually will do is, again, I start in the house, and I teach a game called Crazy Eights. And this is where you have the dog, and you're walking, and it's just random changes of directions. So that for the dog, it's, well, where the heck are you going? And then they start looking more at you instead of, I'm going this way, you're coming with me. You keep it a bit more unpredictable, because then they're focusing more on you instead of what they want to do. And just teaches them to walk with you. I also implement the rule that there should be no tension on the leash. If the dog starts pulling and there's that tension in the leash, I stop walking and I wait until they loosen up that tension. If they are really persistent and not focusing on you at all, I'll go and give a signal to pay attention, and as soon as they look back, then I turn and start to walk in a different direction. So then it's like, oh, okay, well, I guess we're going this way. But a main reason why dogs pull on the leash is because we follow them. It goes back to that whole, what's in it for me, what's the point of me doing this? Why am I going to start pulling and having all this tension that's uncomfortable on me when it doesn't get me anywhere any faster? In fact, it just takes longer. That starts to teach them to keep a loose leash. And again, once your dog is following well on a leash, start to practice in the backyard. When they're doing well in the backyard, that's when I start to go on leash away from the home, which for most people starts with your front yard. Because even though it's still on the property, it's typically not going to be fenced, and so now it's exposed. And now any threat or danger can come at us. But I keep it first in the front yard, in the driveway, across the street and back, down a few houses and back, and gradually building up how far we can walk. But initially, you're keeping it close to home, so that way, if they start to lose focus or something sets them off and they're just not listening anymore, you have an easy escape route of, nope, we're done. And you walk back inside, leash goes off, consequence of action, we're not gonna walk anymore. And you can always try again later once everything is settled down, or the next day. If you come across anything that your dog reacts to, how many people have a dog that when they see another dog or a person or anything, that their dog goes nuts on the leash? Okay, a few. Gradually more people are raising their hand. It's okay, this is a safe place. What I teach people is that when you're coming across something that your dog may react to, ideally before they even react, I curve around it. Curving for dogs is what's called a calming signal. Dogs do it even with each other. Very rarely do they go straight directly head on because there's usually going to be some sort of a confrontation when that happens. Even if it's at the last second, you'll see them kind of curve and kind of approach more from the side or sniffing them from behind or things like that. Because curving is them being polite. And so it's the same thing for you. If you're coming up on something, ideally before they react to it, curve around it. And what I always tell people, if your dog is reacting, they need more space. You're looking for that sweet spot in terms of distance where, yeah, they're exposed to it, but they still feel comfortable enough that they don't feel the need to react to it. And sometimes that can just be a couple feet. With this dog, you'll see where he signals to pay attention a little bit late and doesn't quite go as far, and so you get that reaction. Now this time, you'll see that he signals a little bit sooner, and all he does is go just a few more feet distance. Barely even glances over. So sometimes that little bit of distance is all it takes for them to feel comfortable. Usually if they're reacting, it's because they're really uncomfortable about it. You're looking for that sweet spot where they don't give that reaction, and then you practice more there. The more that they're able to walk past something without freaking out over it, and now you've got this other dog reacting back, and now they're just getting ready to want to go at each other, the less they can practice that, and the more they can practice just walking calmly past it, that becomes their new habit. And then you can gradually start, generally, you can gradually start shortening that distance to the point where really that curving is just more of that symbolic gesture of being polite, where it's just a couple steps to the side to walk around. Yeah, they're close enough that they can, they could still approach the person or the dog or whatever, but it's just more of that symbolic gesture of, no, we're going to give you a little space, and we'll give you some space, you give us some space, and that's okay. Yes?
Oh, sorry, I was talking to the mic. So my dog does that whole panicking thing and barks and tries to go after someone. So I have him sit and wait for that person and that dog to go past us before he gets his signal to continue to move on. Is that okay, or is that more?
Ideally, if you're able to, I prefer to start with the curve, just because, like I was saying before, a dog's natural defense mechanism is flight, freeze, and fight. If they're able to, they're going to go with flight first because that's their safest choice. Avoid conflict altogether, just get away from it. If they can't run away, then they're going to freeze, which oftentimes can be a variety of different calming signals, or them literally freezing up and holding really still. Sometimes it's them showing their teeth, growling, barking, their hackles going up. It looks like fight, but they're still keeping their distance. It's more of that bluff of back off, leave me alone, and them trying to threaten their way out of a situation. If that doesn't work, then they have to defend themselves. And so there are going to be some situations where you can't get, just curve around it. And so, yeah, you may need to have them just kind of stay or sit. But what I usually will do, if possible, is you step in between. And again, kind of use that hand signal as that reassurance of, you don't need to worry about this. Because at that point, you're doing another calming signal of splitting, where you're acting as a barrier between them and whatever the potential threat is. But ideally, I like to curve just because you can start to get them out of that habit of having those reactions, and then you can make that curve generally smaller and smaller. So what we'll talk about now, attitude. A lot of times when you're teaching a dog to walk well on a leash, it's like teaching someone how to swim. You don't just chuck them in the deep end and get frustrated with them. You need to start in the shallows, learn the basics, and build up to the deep end. What is your posture like? How, are you grabbing the leash and holding it really tight like this because there's already tension in your body as you're doing it? How tense are you when there's potential danger? Do you tense up when you see another dog? Because all that's doing is showing the dog, we were fine before that dog came around the corner. And now you're nervous and you're getting more and more tensed up, and it's no, leave it. And there's a whole lot of tension going on when, so all it's going to do is teach the dog, well, clearly other dogs make you uncomfortable, so we need to keep them away, and it just reinforces that behavior. How confident are you when you're walking? Are you constantly trying to coax the dog and no, come on, or are you being more confident about it? When you have a dog that's overreacting to the mailman, the doorbell, things like that, there's a 3-step process that I usually teach people on how to handle it. The first thing you're going to do is respond to them, because they do still have a job to do, which is to alert those who are in charge or qualified to make those decisions to potential threats or dangers. So the first thing I do is respond to them, neutral tone. It's okay, don't worry about it. Thanks, buddy, come here, and then you call them away from it. If they continue to react, your next step is you're going to investigate it, because maybe it is that rare occasion of, okay, wait, who is this person? Why are they in our yard? And so what you'll do is you'll go to where the dog is and actually investigate to see what it is that they're looking at. The majority of times, it's nothing. So it's that same thing of, oh, that's okay, don't worry about it, come on. Where you acknowledge them, call them away. If at that point they continue to react to it, then you remove them and you put them into a timeout. If when they calm down, you'll let them out, because that's going to be their reward for calming down. They get to rejoin the group. If they immediately rush back and start barking again, they immediately go back into a timeout again. versus if they come out and then say 5 minutes later they start barking at something else, then I reset and go back to the respond, investigate, remove process. With this one, the mailman is the ultimate success that barking is going to scare him off. Mailman, garbage trucks, kids on bikes, people walking the dogs, joggers, it's all these things that are approaching the home, the dog sees it, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da, oh good, they left. And I scared it off, and this works. Keep in mind that in their mind, they're just doing their job. And so they're not going to see you getting out, stop it, quiet down, shut up, don't do that. It's just the mailman. You getting after them, they're not going to see it as, yeah, you're upset about what I'm doing because I'm doing my job. They're going to either see it as, okay, this is either A, you're really worried about this too, so I got to bark even harder to make it go away quicker, or B, good, reinforcements have shown up, and now we're going to bark at it together. Your whole goal with this is to diffuse the situation, and you getting after the dog and winding them up further is not going to do that. It's very similar to someone ringing the doorbell and say a 5-year-old trying to answer the door themselves versus mom or dad, someone's at the door and letting the parents know that there's somebody at the door. We typically teach little kids, you don't answer the door. You come get one of us because they're not capable to make those judgment calls of who is this. It's not safe for them to do that. It's the same basic attitude that I have with dogs. You need to teach them through this that you're fine to warn me, that's okay, but then it's my responsibility. I'll let you know if I need your help, is the attitude that I generally have. Okay, and then the last one is going to be socialization. Socialization is all about making the dog familiar and comfortable with common things that they're going to be exposed to. You want to socialize a dog to things like kids, other dogs, adults, bikers, vet clinics, and keep in mind that what you may need to socialize a dog to in a rural area is going to be very different than when you're living in a downtown large city. Because downtown, yeah, you're probably going to be living in an apartment building that they have to be used to and comfortable with elevators. You don't need to expose a dog to elevators when they're living on a farm. I tend to have a different view than a lot of other people do in terms of what you're looking for with socialization. I'm not even necessarily looking at trying to make this really positive interaction and where you're getting the dog excited and things like that. My goal is that I want their reaction when they're walking past something to be the same way that I would walk past a total stranger. That unless there's something that directly pulls my attention, I'm going to walk past them, and within 5 seconds, I've forgotten everything about that person, and I couldn't tell you a single thing about them. That's what, for me, a well-socialized dog should be, that they're so comfortable and familiar that they're just not fazed by it. And so I usually start with socializing from a safe distance. It kind of goes back to that curving. If they are reacting, they're too close. Move them further away to where they feel comfortable, and let them just watch. Let them take it in. Don't distract them. And you can generally move them closer as they feel more comfortable. Keep in mind, too, how other people approach your dog. Because the instinctive, oh my gosh, what a cute dog, and coming up, especially if they're on leash, they can't run away. So at best, they're freezing, and oh my gosh, you're still coming at me, and that's when people get bit. And it's usually the people that go and say, well, that's okay, dogs love me, or I'm great with dogs, that get bit. Because they rush up on a dog, they're not paying attention to their body language. That, oh, you are really uncomfortable. And so don't be afraid to tell people, oh, hold on, stop. Because they tend to get nervous of people or whatever you have to say. Just ignore them. We're trying to get him comfortable around people and try to keep them more engaged with you. Once the dog is settled down, okay, we'll try calling him to you instead of them rushing up on him. That way the dog has a choice if they feel comfortable enough to approach and not forcing them. And if they don't, sorry, maybe next time. Don't be afraid to be your dog's advocate for this. And you can see in this dog's body language the difference between letting the dog make the decision of coming up to you versus you rushing up on the dog. You see how the ears go back and the eyes get a little bit bigger and that, oh, and trying to move away sort of behavior versus bending down, calling them to your side where they're going to feel more comfortable. Yeah, she's still a little bit unsure, but she's a lot more comfortable doing it that way. Even really well-adjusted and well-behaved dogs, you come down on them and you're going to see them get uncomfortable. They may tolerate it, but they're not enjoying it. let them have that choice if they feel comfortable enough to go up to someone. You can't rush socialization. You have to go at the dog's pace. A lot of people, no, look, they're fine, come here, and they try to drag the dog over. But again, can't run away, trying to freeze, oh, I can't freeze because now I'm being dragged over here. And you're putting them in a situation where they're going to have to defend themselves in their mind. How tense do you feel? It goes back to the walk. Are you tensing up every time that someone gets too close to you? Because if that's the case, okay, maybe you need more space. And that's fine too. You know, I've had people where as a couple, one person can have the dog walking past groups of people, other dogs, and the dog's just fine. Versus their partner that gets nervous and tensed up, and so now the dog is overreacting with that one. Because, okay, they make you really uncomfortable, I gotta keep them back to keep you safe. Avoid overly reassuring the dog. You know, when you have the, oh no, I know, it's so scary, isn't it? Well, it's okay, don't worry about it. They're not gonna do anything, they're friendly, and you're just making a huge reaction out of it. It's very similar to a little kid that trips and falls and scrapes their knee. They're not bleeding, they're fine, but if you rush over and, oh my gosh, are you okay? Come here, we'll wash it off and we'll get you a Band-Aid and we'll get you ice cream. You know, you make a huge reaction out of it. The kid has a meltdown because, holy crap, this must be serious because everyone's freaking out. Versus, you're fine. Brush it off, come on, keep going, and pretty soon they're up and running around and they're probably tripping again. So lead by example. It's fine to kind of reassure the dog little bits, but don't make a huge display out of it because all that's going to do is show the dog that this makes you really uncomfortable too. Okay, so with those 6 boundaries, I find that majority of behavior issues tend to stem from them. And by implementing those 6 boundaries, it helps us establish a good base and foundation for manners and good behavior. And what I always tell people is, again, you want calm to be normal. That should be your baseline. That should be your goal to always kind of strive for. Let the dogs have choices. Don't micromanage their day. If you are spoon feeding every little thing that they can and can't do in a day, it's not healthy mentally. Who here has worked at a job where they've been micromanaged to a T? How fun is that? And on top of that, it affects their mental capabilities. If they don't have to think for themselves, they soon can't think for themselves. And so then they're completely overly dependent upon always having to have someone tell them what to do, which is not mentally healthy. I mean, you look at any psychology study, that's not a healthy mental capacity for them. Okay, questions? Yep.
All right. Who's got questions? I'm coming. All right. I'm going to start in the front and move back.
Thank you. Okay, so my girlfriend and I, we recently are fostering another dog just like this one. This one was also rescued. He's a lot better, but he's obviously nervous around new people, but he's doing a lot better. But my question is, with the new dogs, they get really excited and hyped up when we get home. And she lives in an apartment complex, so we have to like put the leash on, everything like that, the coats, get them ready to take them to the bathroom. By that time, they've already like peed everywhere. They're overly excited. What would you recommend we do in that scenario?
Okay, so what he was talking about is like they're fostering a dog, and when they get home, they get really, really worked up and overly excited, and they have to take them out to go to the bathroom because they live in the apartment complex, and so then they start kind of peeing and that excitement peeing. Yes. So a lot of times this is again where, I mean, do they stay in a kennel at all, or
No,
are they loose?
Normally in the apartment.
Okay.
It's like a studio, so they're just kind of.
Okay. A lot of it is coming in and again completely ignoring them, and yeah, they're going to be excited. But I mean, do you have carpet or do you have hard floor?
It's hard.
Okay. Be glad for that.
He jumps up on the bed and pees. That's what I'm like.
Okay. And so one thing that I've done before in the past is when you walk in, if they're immediately over the top, I walk right back out again. And I wait until I hear them quiet before I, and you may have to repeat that a few different times, but you'll start to see them hesitate more and more in terms of, okay, well, what's going on? And it's going to be one of those things that takes some time to try to reverse the habit. A lot of it is just trying to, again, what we were talking about before, where you're not feeding the reaction. When you walk in, don't look at them, don't say anything to them. If you have to, just stand there until they've calmed down. And if they don't, that could be where maybe we need to try where you just leave the room. Because that consequence, no, we're not going to, this doesn't fly. by acting this way. You know, it's possible too where short term you may need to get something like a puppy pen if that is enough to contain them. That way they can't just.
Sometimes they use it, sometimes it's like they intentionally don't use it.
Okay.
It's like they'll pee by it or something.
Well, and like with the puppy pen, in terms of like, that way they can't just go and run and jump on the bed when you get home.
And not pad.
Yeah, sorry, not pad, puppy pen.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that way it confines them a little bit more to a smaller area, and that way they can't just go and run and jump on the bed. Sometimes the puppy pads can also give mixed messages in terms of, do I go to the bathroom outside, or, well, it's fine to pee in here. And so sometimes the puppy pads can also give that mixed message.
X-nay on the puppy pad. Because I leave one out just in case.
How old is it?
They're about 2.5, but they both came from like abused homes.
Okay.
That's part of the issue too.
We've had this one longer. We've actually adopted this one. The other one's a foster.
Okay.
It's definitely a lot more work.
Yeah, generally at that age, I mean, I use the puppy pads when it's more of a, they can't hold it because they're really young and they haven't developed that bladder control. So probably at this point, probably not the puppy pads, yeah. Especially if they're not even really using it that much anyways. If they are still going to the bathroom when you're gone, again, that's where maybe like the puppy pen, or if temporarily you need to use like a crate or something like that, so that way it's a smaller area that they don't just have free reign to go and pee wherever, and it gets them out of that habit. Okay, who?
My question is regarding walks. Our dog gets distracted with everything. It can be leaves, a dog, a person, a bird, anything. So like we try to walk her and keep her on pace, but like she will be distracted all the time.
Okay, and this is gonna be one of the things that I actually would be teaching in if we did that walk seminar, because what I usually do is I teach people a simple request of pay attention, where it's just a simple sound that you make that is a signal of, okay, I need to pay attention to what you're doing and to follow you. It makes it a lot easier. Unfortunately, we don't have time to really get into that tonight. But again, this is going to be where you may need to, in the beginning, you know, more space, that whole curving thing. And for some people, what they have to do to begin with is, rather than just walking around their neighborhood, they go to a park, you know, take the dog in the car, go to a park. That way they have plenty of space if they need to curve around, even if it's 100 feet or 200 feet to give the dog. That way they can still be exposed to those things, but not close enough that they are overstimulated or feel the need to react to it. Because when you're dealing with behavior issues, it's kind of a two-step process. The first step is that you need to remove the opportunities for the dogs to practice the behaviors you don't want. Because the more they're able to do those things, the more they're just reinforcing and developing those behaviors into habits. You need to give some time where they're not able to really reinforce those behaviors, and then you start to teach new behaviors. So that could be where like that pay attention comes into play, where, you know, instead of I see another dog, I gotta freak out at it, they start getting the habit of, oh, okay, where are we going? And looking to you in terms of following your lead. So, yeah, we're probably gonna wanna definitely do the walk.
I think that we have plenty of interest for the walk.
Yes.
You've sold me.
Yes. Okay.
Again, 2 dogs. Oh, so one of them is a year old. The other one is 2. The one that's younger, he's a pit bull. He's larger than their older dog. And when they play, he's submissive to their other dog. He plays. He rolls over. They play great. But with toys, when we have them in a room with all the toys, and this happened at Christmas, the younger, larger dog, anytime his brother would pick up a toy, he would go and like take it from him, from his mouth, and lay it down. And like he couldn't play with anything. Like he had to have everything. And they ended up getting into a nasty fight over. And like we can't get him to leave the other dog alone. Like he's gotta just, whatever he's gotta take it right away. And we don't know what to do about that, and they keep fighting.
So I have a dog that's got a similar issue, where if I take him to a park, he will go and gradually collect all the other dogs' balls, lay on them, and scream at any dog that comes near him. Some people don't know how to share, or some dogs don't know how to share. Years ago, my family had 3 dogs, and when they would go and give bones or like chews for each of them, what the one would do is he'd run off to bury his under the bed, and then go and take one of the other dogs. And so what we had to start doing that quickly curbed that behavior was we would go and give him the bones. When he would run off to the bedroom, we would let the other dogs go behind a baby gate, and then we would go and take the the chew that he had buried. So he goes to go grab the other dog's chew and realize, oh crap, I don't have that. Then went to go back to get his and realized, oh, it's not there anymore. So he started learning really quickly. No, it's kind of like the same thing with the food, where when we give it to you, this is what, this is the time to chew or play with it or whatever. When you leave it, it's done. And so with dogs that tend to get possessive over toys, in the beginning, you want to make sure it's more of a controlled environment where you're just giving the toys down when you can supervise. And if he starts trying to take the other dog's toys, you can put him into a timeout, for example.
It weirdly happens indoors. When they're outside, they'll run with the same toy.
Okay.
Inside, he's just got to have them.
Okay. Yeah, so if that's the case, what I would typically do is if I'm giving toys to them, rather than just having them laying all over the place, when I give them toys, if he starts trying to steal it, he either goes into a timeout or he goes on a leash and you hold him close to you until he settles down and relaxes. That way he learns that, okay, me doing this does not give me the end result that I want to. And it's also giving the other dog the respect of, no, you can play with this. This is yours. There's going to be times where, yeah, they may kind of steal it back and forth, things like that, but when there's that possession, like that possessiveness or that over-tension, that's when he loses that privilege of being able just to have free reign of those toys. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Shane. And Shane's going to stick around for a few minutes, so if you have other questions and things, I'm sure he'd be happy to answer those. And he's also at the Utah Dog Park, and he does one-on-one trainings. Do you do groups? You mostly do one-on-one.
I do
right?
one-on-one.
Yeah.
I'm currently revamping one of my workshops to hopefully start doing that again. But my workshops and classes I do differently than a lot of other trainers, because it's kind of like with this one where you don't really bring the dogs, because when they're working at home, that's going to be where you see their normal behaviors. When they're in a room full of a bunch of strange people and strange dogs, it's really easy to be overly distracted and they're not going to be able to focus. So it tends to be more focused on teaching the owners.
And Shane's also got some really cool social media. He's on Facebook, and you have Instagram and things too, so check him out. He makes good posts and things. Thanks for joining us tonight. We're going to be back next month on February 5th. It's the first Tuesday of every month. We're going to be talking about dental health for your pets, and we're going to say kind of show you what a day in the life of a pet getting a dental cleaning looks like. We're going to kind of walk you through the whole process, talk a little bit about dental disease, and we're also going to tell you a little bit about the dental special we're going to be doing next month. But thank you all for coming, and have a good evening.